What happens when Hollywood's most disciplined warrior meets television's sharpest tongue in what was supposed to be a routine morning chat? What unfolds when a man who spent 4 decades perfecting the art of control finally reaches his breaking point on live television? This isn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This is the story of the most explosive, most devastating, most unforgettable confrontation in morning television history. A moment so raw, so visceral, so completely unscripted that it left an entire studio speechless and millions of viewers with their jaws on the floor. Tom Cruise. The name alone conjures images of impossible stunts, box office records, and a work ethic that's become legendary in an industry known for excess and ego. For 40 years, he's been the gold standard of professionalism. The man who does his own stunts. The actor who shows up 6 hours early. The star who treats crew members like family. A living icon who's navigated the treacherous waters of fame with grace, humility, and an iron will that's never once faltered in public. Until that morning. Until Joy Behar decided to test just how far she could push him. What you're about to witness is the moment when calculated provocation met decades of accumulated pressure. When a predatory question collided with a man who'd finally had enough. When the mask of celebrity composure shattered on live television, revealing something far more powerful underneath. Raw, unfiltered truth delivered with the force of a man who'd spent a lifetime earning the right to speak it. The studio lights were bright that morning. The audience was buzzing with anticipation. The cameras were rolling, and nobody, not the producers frantically working their control boards. Not the other hosts arranged in their familiar semicircle. Not even Joy Behar herself had any idea they were about to witness television history. The morning of November 8th started like any other episode of The View. The studio audience filed in, excited for another round of celebrity interviews and hot topic discussions. The show's signature red couches gleamed under the professional lighting. Camera operators checked their angles. Sound engineers adjusted their levels. In the control room, producers reviewed their rundown. Confident they had another smooth show ahead. Tom Cruise wasn't scheduled to arrive until 9:47 a.m. for the 10:15 segment. But true to his legendary reputation, he walked through the studio doors at 8:30, not with an entourage of handlers and assistants, but with a single publicist and a warm smile that immediately disarmed the staff. "Morning, everyone," he called out, his famous voice carrying easily across the studio floor. "Hope I'm not too early." The crew members exchanged glances. They'd seen hundreds of celebrities come through these doors, the divas who demanded specific water temperatures, the method actors who refused to break character, the social media stars who spent more time checking their phones than talking to anyone. But Tom Cruise, he was shaking hands with the camera operators, learning the names of production assistants, asking the makeup artist about her weekend. "Mr. Cruise, you really didn't have to come so early," the segment producer stammered, clearly flustered by the Alistair's genuine warmth. "Tom, please," he corrected with that megawatt smile. "I like to get a feel for the space. Plus, I wanted to make sure I wasn't rushing anyone. Your time is valuable too." Little did he know that his early arrival would become the calm before an unprecedented storm. The host began arriving around 9 a.m. Whoopi Goldberg came first, immediately lighting up when she saw Tom. They'd worked together on a charity initiative for underprivileged children. And their reunion was genuinely warm. Sarah Haynes followed, excited about the interview. Even Sunny Hostin, usually the most reserved of the panel, seemed animated by the prospect of talking with someone of Tom's caliber. And then Joy Behar made her entrance. Those who knew Joy well recognized something in the way she surveyed the Cena calculating look, a slight smile that never quite reached her eyes. She greeted Tom politely enough, but her demeanor was measured, professional. yet with something underneath, something the veteran crew members had seen before. Joy Behar was locked and loaded. "Tom, wonderful to have you," she said, extending a hand. "Joy, thanks for having me," Tom replied, his warmth never faltering. "I've been a fan of the show for years. You all keep it real, and I respect that." Joy's smile widened slightly. "Oh, we definitely keep it real here. That's our specialty." The words hung in the air just a moment too long. Whoopi glanced at Joy, something unreadable flickering across her face. But the moment passed, and the pre-show bustle resumed. Tom settled into the green room, reviewing talking points with his publicist. The new film, Shockwave Protocol, was his passion project, to return to the hard-edged action that had made him a household name, combined with a deeper exploration of the moral cost of violence. He'd done extensive research, trained for 8 months, and performed stunts that insurance companies had explicitly forbidden. At 58 years old, he was proving that dedication and discipline could defy time itself. Asterisk, they'll probably ask about the stunts, his publicist mentioned, scanning her notes. "Maybe some questions about the younger cast members you're mentoring." Standard stuff, Tom nodded, but his mind was already elsewhere. He was thinking about a particular sequence in the film, a moment of vulnerability he'd fought to keep in the final cut. A scene where his character breaks down, showing the psychological toll of decades of violence. It was the kind of honest moment that big-budget action films usually cut. But Tom had insisted it was real. It was human. It mattered. Little did he know that real was about to take on an entirely different meaning. At 10:12 a.m., Tom was escorted to the set. The audience erupted in applause, genuine and enthusiastic, for a star they'd watched for decades. He waved, smiled, and settled into the designated guest seat with practiced ease. The lights were warm, the atmosphere electric. This was what he did. This was easy. "Welcome back to The View," Whoopi began, her smile radiant. "We are so thrilled to have Tom Cruise with us today." "Tom, thank you for being here." "Thank you for having me," Tom replied, his posture relaxed, his demeanor open. "This is fantastic." The first 8 minutes were textbook perfect. They discussed Shockwave Protocol. Tom shared amusing anecdotes from the set, the stunt that went slightly wrong, the young co-star who'd been terrified of heights until Tom spent 3 weeks personally training her. They laughed about the director's obsessive attention to practical effects. The audience laughed in all the right places. The energy was positive, warm, engaging. Sarah asked about his training regimen. Tom deflected with characteristic humility, redirecting credit to his stunt team, his trainers, the dedicated professionals who made him look good. Sunny inquired about mentoring the next generation of action stars. Tom spoke passionately about the responsibility of passing down not just techniques, but values, the importance of respecting your crew, honoring your commitments, putting in the work when nobody's watching. And then there was Joy Behar. She sat there unusually quiet during those opening moments. A predatory smile played at the corners of her mouth. Anyone familiar with her interview style recognized the look. She was like a boxer in the early rounds, studying her opponent, looking for the opening. Her colleagues were carrying the conversation, building rapport, creating comfort. And Joy was letting them because she knew that comfort was the predecessor to vulnerability. The audience had no idea. The other hosts were blissfully engaged. Even Tom, despite all his media training and decades of interview experience, didn't see it coming. But at the 10-minute mark, Joy leaned forward slightly. Her posture changed. The temperature in the studio dropped by several degrees, though nobody could have explained exactly why. "Tom," she said, her voice cutting cleanly through the warm conversation, "can I ask you something?" The phrasing alone should have been a warning. Not "I have a question" or "let me ask you about," but "can I ask you something?" The false politeness of requesting permission for something she was going to do regardless. Tom turned to her, still smiling, still open. Of course, you talk a lot about values and responsibility, Joy continued. Her tone conversational, but with an edge sharp enough to cut glass. About mentoring the next generation, about putting in the work. But I'm curious, how do you reconcile that with some of the choices you've made in your personal life? The air shifted palpably. Whoopi's eyes widened slightly. Sarah's smile froze. Sunny's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on her note card. In the control room, a producer muttered, "Oh God, here we go." But Tom remained composed. His smile didn't falter, though something in his eyes, something subtle, something steely, suggested he understood exactly what was happening. "I'm not sure I followed, Joy," he said evenly. "What choices are you referring to?" Joy leaned back, clearly relishing the moment. "Well, you've been married 3 times. You've had very public relationships that ended in very public ways. You've been involved in, let's call it what it is, some controversial organizations and belief systems that many people find troubling. And yet here you are talking about values and mentorship, as if Joy." Whoopi tried to intervene, her voice carrying a warning note. But Joy wasn't finished. She leaned in, her voice dripping with disdain, "As if you're some kind of moral authority. I'm just wondering if you see the contradiction here, because a lot of people watching might see it." The studio held its breath. This wasn't a question. It was an ambush, carefully constructed and deliberately deployed. A personal attack wrapped in the veneer of legitimate journalism, designed to provoke, to embarrass, to score points with viewers who loved seeing celebrities taken down a peg. Tom Cruise sat perfectly still for 3 full seconds. His expression didn't change. His posture didn't shift. But everyone in that studio, from the audience, members in the back row to the camera, operators behind their equipment to the host, sitting mere feet away, felt something change in the man beside them. "Joy," he said quietly, his voice measured and controlled. "That's an interesting way to frame a question." It wasn't anger in his tone, not yet. It was something more dangerous. Absolute clarity. The voice of a man who just realized exactly what kind of conversation this was going to be, and was calculating his response with the precision of someone who'd spent decades navigating Hollywood's treacherous waters. "I'm just asking," Joy pressed, sensing she'd drawn blood but not yet satisfied. "You put yourself out there as this example of dedication and professionalism, but your personal life tells a very different story, doesn't it? 3 marriages, Tom, 3 divorces. That's not exactly the picture of stability you're trying to sell here." "Joy," Tom replied, his voice still calm, but with a new undercurrent that made everyone pay closer attention. That's really not," Sarah started, clearly uncomfortable with where this was heading. "No, it's fine," Tom interjected, his voice still calm, but now with a sharper edge that demanded attention. "Joy wants to have a conversation about personal life versus professional conduct. I'm happy to have that conversation." He shifted in his seat slightly, turning to face Joy more directly. The movement was subtle, but it changed the entire dynamic. This was no longer a casual interview. This was a confrontation, and Tom Cruise had just accepted the challenge. "First," he said, his words deliberate and precise, "yes, I've been married 3 times. Each of those marriages ended for private reasons that I've never discussed publicly, because I respect the people involved too much to turn their pain into entertainment. But let me ask you something, Joy. Do you believe that someone's marital history disqualifies them from having professional integrity?" "I'm not saying it disqualifies you," Joy shot back, clearly enjoying the turn of events. "I'm saying there's a disconnect between the image and the reality. You can't stand there. I'm sitting." Tom interrupted, the faintest edge of steel in that correction. "But please, continue." Joy's eyes narrowed. She wasn't used to being interrupted. She wasn't used to guests who pushed back. Most celebrities either crumbled under her questioning or retreated into publicist-approved deflections. But Tom Cruise was doing neither, and she could feel her control of the situation slipping. "You're involved with an organization that many people consider to be a cult?" she pressed on, dropping any pretense of subtlety now. "An organization with a very troubling history of stop," Tom said, his voice quiet. Final dot. In that instant, the friendly movie star was gone. In his place sat someone else entirely. Someone harder. Someone who'd survived for decades in an industry that chewed up and spit out lesser talents. Someone who'd finally decided that silence was no longer an option. "Here's what we're really doing here," he said, his voice level but carrying an unmistakable weight. "Joy, we're not having a conversation about professional conduct or personal values. What you're doing, and everyone watching knows, it's trying to score points by attacking someone's private life and religious beliefs on live television. Is that accurate?" Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Tom continued, his words precise and cutting. "Because if we're going to have that conversation, let's have it honestly. You want to talk about my marriages? Fine. I've been divorced. Each time was painful. Each time I tried my best and it didn't work out. I've never claimed to be perfect in my personal life, Joy, but I show up to work on time. I treat every person on every set with respect. I've never once missed a day of filming due to unprofessional behavior. I've mentored dozens of young actors and stunt performers, many of whom are now thriving in their careers. That's what I'm selling, not perfection. Professionalism." The audience was dead silent. Whoopi and Sarah exchanged glances, both clearly uncertain whether to intervene or let this play out. Sunny was frozen, her eyes wide. But Joy Behar, emboldened by years of television combat and convinced of her righteousness, made a fatal tactical error. She doubled down. "That's a very convenient distinction," she said, her voice dripping with skepticism. "Personal versus professional. But Tom, your association with what?" Tom cut in. "Joy, say it clearly. What organization are you referring to?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," she said. "I do," Tom replied. "But I want everyone watching to understand exactly what you're doing here. You're attacking my religious beliefs on live television in front of millions of people because it plays well with your audience, doesn't it? Because it's easy. Because I'm sitting here and you've got home court advantage and your producers probably thought this would make great television." Tom's voice had risen slightly, not in volume, but in intensity. Each word was precise. Each sentence a surgical strike. "You want to question my professional conduct? Show me one person, one crew member, one co-star, one director who would say I've ever been anything less than completely committed and respectful on set. You want to discuss my personal life? Okay, but then let's discuss yours too, Joy." Tom Cruise stood up slowly, the movement smooth and deliberate. It wasn't just a physical shift. It was a declaration. He didn't need to raise his voice to command attention. His presence did that for him. The entire studio seemed to hold its breath as he rose, towering over the set, the room feeling smaller with every step. "Joy," he began, his voice steady, but carrying a weight that made everyone listen closely. "I've been in this industry for 40 years. 40 years of hard work, sacrifice, and commitment to my craft. I've been through the grueling days, the broken bones, the endless training. I've made decisions based on what's best for my work, not what's convenient, and I've shown up. Day in and day out, even when I'm exhausted, injured, or dealing with personal struggles. I've done it for the people who depend on me, for the fans who believe in me." He paused, locking eyes with Joy, his expression unwavering. The studio fell into an eerie silence. the tension palpable. Joy's confident smirk had vanished, replaced by something else, something between defiance and hesitation. Tom continued, his voice still calm, but laced with an undeniable intensity. In all those years, through all the challenges, I've never compromised my professional standards. Not once. And you know what? Joy. You can sit there and judge my personal life. You can mock my beliefs. And you can try to tear me down in front of millions of people. That's your prerogative. But let me make something clear. He leaned in, the space between him and Joy now charged with an undeniable energy. Don't you dare imply that my personal choices somehow invalidate everything I've built, everything I've worked for, everything I've given to this craft. You want to call that journalism? No, that's cruelty masquerading as conversation. The silence in the room was deafening. The other hosts, frozen in their seats, exchanged unsure glances. Whoopi's hand remained poised, but she too could feel the shift in the room's atmosphere. Sarah, visibly uncomfortable, adjusted her posture slightly. Even Sunny, who had often remained neutral, shifted uneasily. Tom's eyes were locked on Joy's. And for the first time, he stood fully in his power. A man who'd spent decades earning respect not only through his craft, but through his unyielding commitment to it. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Then spoke again, this time more deliberately. What you're doing isn't journalism. It's not even an interview. You're taking my personal life, my struggles, and using them as ammunition. That's not what we're here for. This isn't the time for you to tear me down, Joy, and I'm done letting you get away with it. Tom stood tall, the entire room still. The light seemed to dim slightly, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Joy opened her mouth, her face flushed, but no words came out. Tom had done the one thing she never expected. He stood his ground with a calm that stripped her of her usual bravado. I've spent 40 years earning the right to speak my truth, and you're not going to twist it into something that serves your agenda. He turned to the audience, his gaze sweeping across them. You see what's happening here, right? This isn't about who I am or what I've done. This is about you using your platform to make a spectacle out of me. And that's not something I'm willing to play along with. The studio buzzed with tension as Tom turned away from the panel, his microphone now unhooked and handed to a stunned production assistant. As he walked off the set, leaving the panel speechless, his departure was a statement, one of power, dignity, and unshakable conviction.